The big issues for 2019. Let's go with the experts. Let's play a bit of true or false. China-US trade wars escalate in 19 and cause havoc on equity markets again.
Yeah, look, I think that's a false. The fact is you've got the two largest economies in the world in a trade war. It doesn't make sense for either of them to have that going on. So I think they'll work it out, and that's a false.
False. I think they'll cause problems in the early part of the year. They'll be sorted out. Everyone needs a result, both sides, and they'll get somewhere, and then it'll ease and it'll be an impetus for overall markets globally.
Look, we think they subside a little bit only because the president needs a presidential campaign to be successful in 23 months and counting. So he needs to get some resolution there. Trade wars are here to stay for the long term now. There's been a major shift in trade relations.
True, actually. I think there's bigger reasons than just economics behind the trade war. There's some geopolitical concerns. So I don't see things letting up anytime soon. So true.
I'll say false. I think we're going to get some sort of resolution in the first half, I hope, but it could cause some more volatility into it.
Okay, tech stocks, mainly in the US, return to favour and rally by more than 10% in 2019. True or false?
True. So I think the regulatory issues some of these companies have been having will start to lift. The valuations look pretty good to me, and the fundamentals are still there. So I think a return to the fangs.
False. I think what you want in 2019 is to ride out the bumpy part of it and then get some leverage with players that have been knocked around. I don't think the tech stocks have been knocked around enough yet.
I think false. I think the tech stocks have been a one-way trade for many investors for a good 2 or 3 years' time now. And I think the valuations are just looking horrendously expensive in the US. I mean, I think they will rally, but I think they'll fall first. It'll be volatile, but I think they'll be lower than they are this time next year.
I think that's true. Yeah, I think there's some value at the mega cap tech end. Alphabet we like, Microsoft we own, even Facebook, which is quite beaten up on 16 times earnings, growing top line still at 30%. So I think there's a chance of a rally towards the end of 2019.
Look, I think they can, only because our view around the cost of funds and the competition for capital from the Fed's funds means that growth is still going to be quite scarce. So I think tech stocks will come back in favour later in 2019.
So true. Australia will print a negative quarter GDP in 2019. True or false?
I think that's true. I think Australia, the outlook for Australia is as bad as I remember it in my 20 years of looking at the Australian economy. So I think we've got a real risk for the first time in a number of years of some recessionary conditions in Australia. So true.
I'm going to go false. I think China stimulates at some stage, good for resources. I think if we can get some rain, the ag sector comes good. And I also think that the government, whichever one it is, has got a pretty good financial position and might stimulate. I think we get through without a negative print.
It's very unlikely. Last time we saw a negative quarter GDP was sort of in 1991. Because we've got so much government spending in infrastructure, I think that's going to buoy the GDP so we won't go negative.
Yeah, I think that could be true. I think there will be a bit of deterioration in fundamentals, but it doesn't mean the share market has to have a bad year.
Yeah, I think with the difficult housing outlook, full employment, slowing immigration, I think there's a good chance that we'll do that. So it will be true for a negative quarter in 2019.
All right, residential property, I think I know the answer to this. Prices in Sydney and Melbourne will fall by 10% in 2019.
False. We think it'll fall just a little less. So we're in the 5 to 10% cap, so false.
I don't think it falls more than 10%. I think people have got way too bearish on property. I think it's going to drift lower, but it's all going to be quite contained. This is a normal property cycle for Australia.
So false.
I'll go false on that. I reckon the property market could bottom out around the time that the Royal Commission findings are handed down.
I think, you look at history, when they come off, they tend to come off maybe around the 15% mark, maybe 20. We've done 10 or a bit more already, so that's leaning to me to say it's false. I think they're going to be soft for a bit longer. It's got to play out, but we don't get there to that level.
Look, again, I think they're going to continue falling. I think the market's under a lot of pressure. There's still been a little bit of speculation in that environment. Everyone's done very well out of property for many, many, many years. I think we're going to see sort of an international scenario where we're going to see sustained, sort of pressure in property prices.
Okay, a show wouldn't be complete without something on the AMP. AMP, true or false, will receive a takeover bid in 2019 and will be off the ASX forever.
That's false. I think there's just too many skeletons in the AMP closet, and I can't see one of the big boards of one of the big companies sort of taking that risk of buying something they just don't know what's there. So it will still struggle, but I don't think it'll find a new owner.
false that will remain listed. I think that no corporate buyer is going to step into AMP. Corporates tend to buy these businesses when they're going well. I think a financial sponsor will find it hard. What are you buying? It's a lot of goodwill in the brand, and I think the brand's materially damaged for the medium term.
I'll go with the odds and say no, it won't get taken over, so it will be trading, so false for us.
I'd love to say true, but consensus is false. Unfortunately, we're going to have to keep looking every time we look at the share tables that the AMP's there. It's going to be very difficult to work out when its value, if it is at all. It's a tarnished brand, its model's under pressure from regulation, but unfortunately it's going to stay on the ASX for all of us to look at for a bit longer.
Yeah, that's the Widowmaker's trade. I'll say false. I think AMP will look like a different business by the end of next year though.
Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
How good's that? Very good. Widowmaker.